Hey y'all, hope you're doing good today. So I wanted to share some thoughts. It'll be kind of a shorter video, but I hope you enjoy it nevertheless, and I hope you're doing good. So yesterday with my new Zen calendar, I was excited to see what the message was. It was really good. Very simple. I like the simple ones because sometimes with Zen-like philosophy, they get sort of unnecessarily wordy, and you're reading and it's kind of like this could have been stated in a 4 or 5 word sentence, you know what I mean? So anyway, yesterday's message was don't go back to sleep. Very simple, right? Stay awake. And this was from Rumi. And so I want to talk about that. Like, what does that really mean? Because it's easy to throw around terms like that, like wake up, or what it means to be. Well, one of the things with, modern times, people talk about being woke, and I think that that's been so twisted and convoluted and associated with other things. So I'm not talking about that. I'm talking more about being awake psychologically, right? And spiritually too. And I personally think that they are so closely related. You can't correctly approach one without the other. I think they are intertwined and work together, the psychological and the spiritual. This is just me. So we're going to talk about that, what it means to stay awake, right? To not go back to sleep, to wake up. The cool thing about this is this was yesterday's message, all right? Don't go back to sleep. Now today's message in the Zen calendar said, just get rid of the false and you will automatically realize the true. And this is attributed to Hoshan. I don't know who this is, but yes, I think that perspective is everything, context, and a lot of times that unfortunately comes through direct firsthand experience, life experience, and hardships. And so if all you've ever known, for example, excuse me y'all, allergies, if all you've ever known is this particular perspective because you were raised to understand reality this particular way, then you're going to that's your total operating mode. Like, you literally don't even know there's an alternative way to look at things. Have y'all ever seen that illustration where there's like a number 6 and a number 9 on the floor, and there's one person standing on this side looking at it? I'm sorry, it's really just one number. It's like if you're standing on this side, they see a 6, but if the person over here is looking at it, the same number on the floor, it looks like a 9. And so the point here is that well, there's a lot of things we can pull from it, right? It is what it is, first of all, the number. And this person could get into an argument with this person, or vice versa, and neither one is wrong. They're both right. And so that's just it. And sometimes we are wrong, but a lot of times it's just a matter of how you're looking at things. And so excuse me y'all, isn't that funny? I get on here to share a message with you all and suddenly have all this drainage. But it's also like that saying, you can't see the forest for the trees. Same thing. And so it's important, even if you think, this is just a generalized message, all right, for all of us. Even if you think everything's great and fine in your life, I still think it's important to get some space from what you're used to, from your environment. And this is, again, illustrated beautifully in all these old legends and fairy tales and folklore, when the characters are typically they're thrust onto this journey that is very challenging usually, right? And it typically involves like the underworld and things like that. But the point is, they come full circle. Just like Joseph Campbell talks about the hero's journey, it's a full circle thing. And so it's not linear, and that's just it. When you come back to the same place, everything is different. because you're different. You're different because you have gone on the journey and you have gained all these other perspectives through your experiences. It's the same thing as traveling to a completely different country that's very, very different than what you are used to. And it's, a lot of their customs can be just very normal for the people in this country, but in your country they can be very strange and unusual, and vice versa. But when you go on a trip like that and you come back home, you see everything differently. So I think that it's this very thing right here that causes us to, hey, sorry, I'm looking, but I think it's always good to keep an eye on your surroundings, right, for safety. But I think it's this very, very thing right here that we're talking about, in regards to there being a lack of experience and a lack of, therefore, gaining other perspectives, that causes so much arguments and just issues between people. And so, again, on my channel, I've mentioned so many times about, having an expanded mindset, so that, just like a bird's eye view, you can see the bigger picture, the whole thing, all of the puzzle pieces, and therefore you have no interest in arguing with someone, because you understand that they are seeing the same thing you're seeing, but they're seeing it from a lower, or I'm not trying to say like you're, smarter or higher in that way, like an arrogant type way, but they're just not seeing things sometimes from an expanded viewpoint. And then vice versa. Sometimes you can be very, very sure of what you're looking at, and yet it's, someone else, you think they're totally wrong, but they're the ones who have the expanded view here because of their unique experiences. So this is something that is big to me, and it would just shed so much light on just going through life with this perspective, understanding that this is why we all see things so differently. I think that this would just bring a lot of understanding and therefore peace to all of us, So and then there is deception. It's not always about perspective and both people being right, depending on the angle that a situation is viewed. Sometimes it's just deception. So and let me say this too, people who, because of their life experiences, which you may not know about, you may think you know a person, but you may not. They may not have shared everything with you, and they may have this expanded view, and they may use that against you, understanding that you're naive, meaning you haven't had as many experiences, and therefore you don't have the context and the expanded view to see things. So they can use that against you and paint a picture or manipulate your perception to keep it constrained and to keep it under their control. So that's why too, it's not only good to strive to have an expanded perspective for being able to get along with everyone and not have so many disagreements or misunderstandings, right? It's not only good for that, but it's also good to protect you as refining your discernment. It's good for that too. Okay. Wouldn't it be great if we just all had telepathy? Yes, superpowers. So, as far as not going back to sleep, this is how I view this. To go back to sleep is to recognize the faults. I'm going back to, combining the two sayings that I shared with you all, which is don't go back to sleep from Rumi, and also from Hoshan, just get rid of the faults and you will automatically realize the truth. It's like a lifting the veil or a I'm doing like a sweeping motion, but so I'm pulling from that this message. To go back to sleep is to recognize the faults and make the choice to not reject it. In other words, to not get rid of it, okay? Or based on what we've talked about already, to just stay within the bounds of those premises that you've already noticed. You may not have confirmed 100% that they're false. This can be dynamics within a workplace, your family, friend group, whatever. But there's definitely going to be red flags or strange things that have caught your attention, okay? Indications, fruit that is trying to get your attention that there is falsehood there. There's deception at work within this environment, okay? Or dynamic or person, whatever it is. So to go back to sleep is to recognize or to see those signs, right, of the false, and yet to make the choice to not reject it or to not get rid of it. Because according to this statement by Hoshan, you're not going to truly realize the truth until you get rid of the false. It's like that's a prerequisite, okay? And again, I think that the reason, and this is all what we're doing, this sounds kind of like an unnecessary discussion, but I think it is necessary because by vocalizing it, it's bringing it into our conscious awareness. Because the truth is, I think that all of these mechanics of what we're talking about with perspectives is something that happens automatically. And because it's automatically within our mind, the way our mind works, it's not conscious. And so we're trying to learn to bring it into the conscious so that we can just better protect ourselves, right? Actively do our part to have the eyes to see. Okay. I think that it's hard for us to quit a good paying job, even though there's all these signs of you know, strange things, red flags, whatever. I think it's hard for us to get rid of that. There's always positives, see, in these examples, to get rid of a job because maybe it's paying well, or to get rid of a relationship or even a friend group because there's some benefits, you know, and maybe you even feel like you're helping them. The benefit doesn't have to be a selfish one. I mean, you may feel like these people are there for you when you need them, and you may feel good that you can help them in some way or whatever. But there's also these other, again, signs. There's going to be fruit. We shall know them by their fruit. We can't ignore the fruit, right? And the reason we can't see the truth, the reason why we are conflicted sometimes when we are immersed in a particular relationship or a social group or a job or whatever, and the reason we're stressed and we feel conflicted is because we want concrete confirmation of deception or like a rock solid reason to leave a situation or a group or whatever. But we're not, you could equate that to truth. You want the truth, but you can't see it. Why can't you see it? And you want that first before you take action, okay? Like leaving. But the reason you can't see it is because you haven't gotten rid of the falsehood, okay? Just get rid of the false and you will automatically realize the truth. You have to create space. You have to get that out of or get rid of. You don't fully consciously realize something is total deception and falsehood when you're in it. You have to get that out of the way. You have to create space. You have to do that first before you can realize the truth, to make a final decision to leave a job or a social group or whatever it is, a marriage, whatever. You see what I'm saying? And so, yes, if you got the point a long time ago and I kept going on and on, I'm sorry. I know I'm trying to drive the point home, but I'm also processing myself, you know, that I'm just sharing how I do that with you all. So something I talk about a lot on my channel too, that's really required to step away and create that space so that you can see the forest for the trees, because you've gotten rid of the faults and then you're realizing the truth. Something that's required for you to do that, like a temporary stepping away, is faith. It's hard. It's hard to step away from the familiar, you know? Even like in my example earlier, if you travel outside the country to a very different place, that can be a little bit unsettling, and you can kind of feel a little bit apprehensive about that, you know. But faith is required, you know. It's, the journey doesn't have to be like it, you know, as intense as it's painted in all these fairy tales, right? It can be. Sometimes it can be stranger than fiction, but you know, just like that old saying, reality is stranger than fiction. I actually think that's true now. But yeah, this stuff, like I said, the reason why we don't do anything, and yet we just live with and tolerate this feeling of inner conflict. What do they call that? Cognitive dissonance. It's like you have both things that are true. It's like, well, you know, this job is good and bad, or this social group or person or relationship I have with them is good and bad, and you're living with that. But, you know, and a lot of people, and even different philosophies, try to say, well, it takes that. It takes that, the good and the bad. And I'm not saying that's not true, but this could be a whole other long video, right? I just want to say this. Let me just cut through that and say this. The Bible says that, you know, as far as God goes, there's nothing bad in him. Nothing. And there's another verse that says, it's a directive to us that says, be ye perfect, right? Even as, you know, I am, you know, Christ. So, on a lower level, one could argue, well, nobody's perfect. I say that too. But it's not about that. I think it's about here, and here it's about intent. It's about intent. In other words, the example that Christ set for us. Hang on, y'all, I got so much drainage. He didn't tolerate. He didn't live with that cognitive dissonance. You know, he just, in fact, the directives to us are to walk away. Because otherwise we are affected. We are affected. And that's just it. And when you're going through these automatic processes, you know, where you're not conscious of the reason why you're staying and stuff like that, you're not asking, you're forgetting to pause and ask the right questions so that the answers can come into your conscious awareness. It's a really important activity that we can engage in for ourselves, just to question things. You know, to seek the truth, to be a truth seeker in that way within our own life, and evaluate the things that we think we understand. So let me position this to you all. I was talking about creating space so that you can see everything differently, to allow the truth to really surface and appear, right? That requires faith. Well, see, if you think about it, you've already applied faith in trying the same thing over and over and over and staying, and yet there's still sign after sign after sign of oddities, what I like to call oddities. Things that just, maybe you don't see the whole picture. You don't have that telepathy to really understand things at that level. Concrete evidence, in other words, of what's going on. But there's at least, it's that whole concept of where there's smoke, there's fire. It's the same thing. Okay? You're smelling the smoke. You are, that's the fruit to me. Okay? And it just brings a whole other level of understanding that verse. You will know them by their fruit, not by looking at the tree. itself, not directly, but by the smoke from the fire, the fruit from the tree. You see what I'm saying? So if you have continued to put faith in a person, a situation, a group, or whatever, and not getting rid of, in other words, removing yourself from the fruit, from exposure to these strange things, because it's like spell work. It keeps you caught up. If you haven't removed yourself and you continue to see this fruit, then you're not going to get what you're trying to get to give you the assurance that it's the right choice to leave. You have to do that first. You have to flip it for the truth to surface. And let me just end by saying this. If you, well, not if, but when we start approaching all of our interactions with people from a spiritual perspective, or if you prefer, energetically, then you're going to sense those fruits stronger, because the fruits are spiritual. That's why they seem elusive and strange. They're spiritual. They're not concrete, actual, literal, physical, most of the time. So just try that mindset, you know, a spiritual or an energetic perspective, okay? Tune into your body and notice things too. And there's a couple of questions you can use that will help your discernment when trying to evaluate, okay? And let's just as an example, think about like a person that you feel conflicted about. One question is, do you sense a positive, like lively, motivated, energized life force within this person or not? That's typically indicative of something good versus a spirit of decay, or like stagnation, okay? Because think about energetically the spiritual principles of the devil versus God, okay? God is about creation. The devil is about stopping that. It's a stoppage, a blockage, a doing away with, okay? Think about that kind of energetic ometer. And the other question, because sometimes people who are wolves in sheep's clothing can check that box. So this is not an either or with these two questions. I would ask both. That's the first question. The second question I would ask is, excuse me, y'all. Are there strange implications or happenings in your life the more that you're around or associated with them? Because the fruit can be affecting you again, and you won't know it. And we're warned about that in the Bible. Until you start to notice patterns, look for that. Change your environment, like I've been talking about this whole time. Create space, so that you can, and when you do create that space, think about a bird. When they're on the ground, they can't see much either. But when they create space by flying up and away from what they were looking at up close, they can see more. It's the same thing with us. I think sometimes we just dismiss or minimize this kind of concept, because when we talk about elevating in a bird's eye view, it's kind of like, well, we can't do that physically. Well, you know, was talking about superpowers earlier, right? Yes, but it's metaphorical. So if you create space this way, same thing. Get away from what you're looking at so close, what you're immersed in. You still can see the bigger picture this way too. So I hope this helps. I hope that you are trusting your intuition and putting safety first as you continue to refine your discernment. I thank you so much for coming on to hear the message. I'll show you guys my eyes a little bit more personal that way, right? But I thank you so much. I'm grateful for you, and I hope that you have a beautiful day, and I'll see you again very soon.